Hello, everyone. Good morning and happy Friday. It is October, and we are glad to be back. I'm glad to be back. Finally, I know you missed me. It's okay. You don't have to tell me. I know you did. Um, we're uh, we're happy to be here. So, how's everyone doing this morning?
Doing well. Yeah, excited it's Friday, but to Rob's point, it's still the morning, so have a little ways to go to the weekend. But yeah, there's a lot of good stuff happening in Greenville this weekend. It's Oktoberfest, so looking forward to yeah, taking in all the good stuff.
My kiddos want to go to Carowinds, which is an amusement park near Charlotte. So we are talking about that. I guess during the month of October, it's Scarowinds,
Scarowinds, that's right.
but we're not going for the Halloween part of it. We're just going for the roller coasters. Um, for those of you, if you are new, by the way, I'm Becky Scott, and I have Alexa and one of our colleagues, Nicole, with us today. And we've got some great things in store. So, just to let you know, what we do is we start out with a community update, and then we go into meetups. We'll talk a little bit about some product updates that we have. And then Nicole is going to talk to us about Cybersecurity Awareness Month because October is all about security. And we have a lot to say about that, don't we, Nicole?
Yes, yes, we do.
Yes, lots to say. So I will jump over to my document that talks about what do we have in community. We've got some new members. We've got a couple of new members that have really been jumping into the community both feet and have answered a ton of questions. So Damok in particular, thank you for jumping in and going crazy in the community. We love to see that. We've got a couple of unanswered questions that I wanted to call out in particular and see if anyone wanted to jump in on those. One of them was about printers in a mixed OS environment. We'll put that link in the chat. If you happen to know a lot about printers and you want to go over and answer that, please do. And then another person had a question about software management and deploying custom apps on a Mac via JumpCloud. So go take a look at that one as well. And then next week, we'll have some more updates for you in community. And Alexa, why don't you take it away on meetups?
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So we have been super busy planning Q4 and scheduling the different meetups for the different groups. So I wanted to call out for our Chicago and DC groups. Save these dates. So if you're in those areas, make sure you write these down. But in Chicago, we are targeting November 9th and December 7th for the meetups this quarter. And then in DC, we are targeting November 16th and December 14th. So write those down. We haven't launched them officially on the platform yet because we're nailing down the locations, but hoping to have those up soon so that you can start registering if you're in those areas. And then some other groups that we are exploring dates for right now, Raleigh. So we'll definitely have a Raleigh meetup. Becky, I know, is excited about that. So if you're in the Raleigh area, we'll have that launched here shortly. And then also, I wanted to have one for our Seattle group. I know we've got some folks in the Seattle area who are normally on this session. So make sure that you stay tuned for that event. And then internationally, we are still pursuing the Tel Aviv meetup. We're targeting, I think, late November on that one. And then also in Paris, London, and Sydney, Australia. So we have not launched that group officially, but I've had some really good calls with the JumpCloud folks in that region. They're super excited about it. So if you're joining Australia, stay tuned because we will be launching those groups and those events in the next couple of weeks. So super exciting to continue to expand the entire network, especially internationally. So yeah, stay tuned. As always, I will drop the link to our network in the chat. Make sure you're a member so you don't miss a thing.
I would like to volunteer to go to the Paris meetup.
That's fine. I'll go to the Sydney one.
That's kind of a long flight. I would volunteer for that one. But yeah, although slight problem, I don't speak French. I know
It's
we
true.
have a couple people who do and are probably going to take care of that. I would definitely. Oh, yay, Stuart, London. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, you should definitely go to that. I could do the London one because I do speak English sometimes.
true.
Sometimes I even
Occasionally.
speak it. Sometimes I even speak it well. Other times, not so much. But yes. So
Yeah, we're excited about the London one because we're trying to plan it. Our CEO Raj will be traveling, and he'll be in London, so we're going to try to do it when he's there. So it'll be a good one.
and the same thing with the Paris one, I believe, right? Because he's going to
Right.
be in a few locations in Europe. So that is going to be awesome. So if you haven't met Raj and you are looking for a chance and you're in those regions, then keep an eye out.
For sure.
Okay. Next up, we have some product news. We've got some fun things to share. So, you may have seen in the community that Tom posted about our new MDM Expirations widget on the admin portal homepage. And what's cool about this is you can keep track of the expirations of your Apple certificates and bearer tokens. And this way, you will have a heads up as to when they are getting ready to expire, because sometimes that can cause issues. I've seen some things recently in the lounge where someone was trying to figure out why things were failing, and it turns out that they had a VPP certificate that had expired, and it was causing their installs not to work. And they were trying to figure out why, and then, oh, well, VPP. Oops, it expired. And then they had to go back and fix that. And then everything was working properly. So being able to see this dashboard with these expirations, you can take a look and see it all up there just in case you miss the notification from Apple that that's getting ready to expire. So we will put those links in our show notes, but we can also drop those in the chat so you can see it. Very excited to have this as an extra feature. Also, there was a post by Scott Reed. We've got a couple of things: activity tab on the device overview page and Mac OS patch notification preview. So, couple of things. The device overview page is a new home base for daily operators of the JumpCloud platform. There's a lot of things on there. So, if you want to view detailed information on the latest device additions, you can check that out. And then, if you want to use patch management policies, you want to understand what notifications your end users will see, then that patch notification preview is a good place to look at that. So we will also have that one. Thank you, Alexa, for putting the first one in there. If you can drop that one in too, that'd be great. And the third one going live today. Encrypt all local drives with our BitLocker policy. So this is really cool. We're going to have the option to encrypt all local drives via BitLocker instead of just the C drive. You'll be able to encrypt all local non-removable drives. Very excited to be putting this out there. It's going to be really helpful. Just going general availability today. So hot off the presses. That just got published in the community about 40 minutes ago. And we also have a knowledge base article on that as well. So if you're using BitLocker to encrypt, you might want to check that out. Stuart, I don't know about Google and Microsoft directory cert expiration at this moment, but I will ask and find out because Mac was the first one that we addressed on that. And I don't know if the other ones are coming yet, but we'll follow up and find out for you. And with that, that's all I have on the product front. And now we have our colleague Nicole with us. And Nicole volunteered to talk about Cybersecurity Month all month long, October, Cybersecurity Awareness. And Nicole, first, why don't you tell us what you do here at JumpCloud? And then talk a little bit about your knowledge and interest in cybersecurity. And then we'll start deep diving into the topic.
Yeah, so Nicole, I always preface any conversation with my pronouns, which are they, them. I am a DevSecOps here, security engineer here at JumpCloud. I'm also on the DEI steering committee. So I've been here for 2 years. I'm currently stationed in Austin, but I'm moving back to Houston in November, actually next month. And then I'm going to kind of bounce between the two cities. So yeah, I've done all sorts of things here at JumpCloud in the time I've been here. I've helped a lot with SOC 2 and keeping that going and being successful, and supporting, our new folks. We have a very expanding team, and luckily I don't have to do all the compliance stuff anymore. But I worked a lot with compliance, and I've also done incident response here. Was a part of the operations team for about 9 months. And then I finally convinced them to let me do DevSecOps, which I'm really thrilled about. I'm really enjoying programming. And it's really was my aim coming into JumpCloud, was to become much more technical, because I did come from a governance, risk management, compliance background. I did my thesis with my master's program at the University of Houston over GRC. So that was really my roots in security and my entryway. But what's great about security is you can go anywhere. So
Yeah. Houston, Cougars, right?
yeah.
Yeah, U of H. Go Cougars.
Yeah.
I have a friend who's a physics professor there. So
Yeah.
very cool. Stuart says SOC 2, not fun. Done it for 6 years with a clean report every time. Yay, we're glad that JumpCloud has made it easier globally. Woohoo.
It's not fun, but it also can be fun if you're like sick in that way, that you just love organization. But yeah, like it's so important though, especially done right. If it's just check boxes, which I'm going to actually talk about this slightly later, so I'll table that, and we can first talk about, unless there's something you want to jump into, we can start talking about Cybersecurity Awareness Month and that campaign.
Let's start there. It's really interesting that we get a month for that, and I think it's really important that we focus on it. It's becoming, more and more important as we go along, as we have so many things that reach the internet, and so we have to focus on that security from a things touch the the IoT and all of that. I mean, cyber in particular, that sort of security becomes really, really important. So why don't you talk a little bit about what got you interested in Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and maybe talk a little bit about the background of it, and let's go from there.
Yeah. So when I was my first internship, I did a lot of the training and awareness program, as well as supported other GRC initiatives. And I came across it. This is actually the 19th year of its occurrence. It was started by the US government and in partnership with industries. They actually dropped the national term recently in the last couple of years. So it's really made more of a international impact now. It's just a tool for companies and individuals to champion security and bring awareness of basic behaviors that just can secure anybody, whether you're an individual, you're a small business, or you're an enterprise. These are basic behaviors that everyone should follow. So I can discuss those. So those really, sometimes they do themes. This is the first year they're not really doing themes. They're just like, these are the basic behaviors, and then you can shape your campaign however you want. What's really great is if you it's safe online, and you can sign up to be a champion, and what that gives you access to is a toolkit which provides almost anything you can think of for a cybersecurity awareness campaign. And they even include like social media messages and like graphics So it really can support any size company. My first time I was in an enterprise when I started using it, but I brought it to a startup. I've brought it here. Everywhere I go, I try to champion awareness. And so some of these basic, like, it's not going to surprise anyone. These are not anything new. So first of all, enabling multi-factor authentication. That is so important. And unfortunately, like, a lot of people still don't know about MFA. And only about, according to LastPass, only about 26% of companies actually use multi-factor authentication, which is very worrying because a few years back, even Microsoft came out saying that 99.9% of password attacks can be prevented using MFA. So two-factor authentication is so important and so there is typically 3 kinds of authentication. It's something you know, which is typically like passwords, something you are, which is like biometrics, and something you have, which is either like a physical token or, you know, a cell phone. If, you know, a lot of times only SMS is available, but really you want to use an authenticator app whenever possible.
Right, because SMS can be easily hacked, right?
Yes. Yeah, compared to
Or spoofed.
yeah, so there's also issues with like push, because that can just become tiresome if you're getting like brute force, and that if they just send the same notification over and over and over again, just hoping you eventually just want to shut it up and you say yes, which happens. So you know, the industry is continually trying to secure and find the best way of doing that. Application like Google Authenticator, definitely first place to go. But even if like the service only offers SMS, that's still better than nothing. So you know, you still want to, layered security is so important. There might be, you know, different risk with, you know, only relying on one, but that's why we start to layer security. So that's kind of providing coverage, so you're not relying on just one control, which then, you know, having multi-factor authentication, and that secondary factor, but we still have to have passwords. And so another behavior that we in Cybersecurity Awareness Month tried to run home is using strong passwords. What does it mean to have a strong password? Tips on how to create strong passwords using passphrases. You know, I always like to be like, use an inspirational message, like, you know, create a more complex way of saying a full sentence, like affirming every day you are awesome and amazing, or you're crushing your work or something, and you can create like a 12 to 20 character password, something very easy to remember because it's basically something you're affirming every day.
Something inspirational from Stuart Smalley or something.
But, you know, unfortunately, according to the Pro Iman Institute, I'm relying on my toolkit, so I don't know how to pronounce that. But they found that 53% of people actually rely on memory. So in addition to a strong password, we need to have a password manager. This allows us to not have to rely on memory, to be able to have unique passwords, because there's like credential stuffing attacks, which if you're using the same credentials across multiple accounts and one of those accounts get breached, those credentials get leaked, and then they try using those credentials against other services, because a lot of people reuse passwords, and typically, you know, their username is the same. It might be their email address. So having a password manager definitely allows you to have long, complex passwords that you don't have to remember. It's same with SSO and, having a master password. You really should only have, if you're implementing all of your identity management controls, users really should only have to remember one password, and then all other authentication is either stored securely and is allowed to be complex, or is handled through federation. So, which we see in the JumpCloud app. So there's that, and like, it's nothing new, right? But unfortunately, this can be internal campaigns, but it's also external campaigns. It's something that affects the whole community. I've done awareness campaigns on the campus, like just students walking by, asking them how they stay safe online. I've given talks to, small business owners. I engage in these kind of podcasts because it's really important. And the reason I'm in security is to keep people safe. So, and it's about individual human beings. So, that might not just be the people that are my customers and, coworkers, but it's everyone. And if we're not all, like, we have to secure, the internet isn't designed to be secure. So we're trying to secure everyone. And if we can't, like, we see it with third-party attacks and everything, like any kind of hole, attackers are going to find their pathway to what they want. So, unfortunately, yeah.
And what's the biggest vulnerability? It's the people, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's your most insecure. That's your most insecure thing, is actually the people.
91% of successful breaches. I'm pulling this from my memory. This is one I use a lot. Starts with a phishing attack, and that means someone took the bait. So this is actually, here, I'll skip ahead. Recognizing and reporting phishing is actually one of the behaviors as well. According to Google, only about 60% of adults can define what phishing is. Semantics found that in 2020, 3 out of 4 companies experienced phishing attacks. I think that's probably, honestly, everyone gets phished. Like, if you get any kind of email, like if you have a form of receiving email, I think everyone's getting some form of phishing attack. So there's like, it's a real risk out there. So training your people to recognize phishing, or even telling, especially older people, they're very susceptible to scams. So like, there's a few times a year we get like a call from my mother-in-law that's like, is this legit or not? And like 10 times out of 10, it's a scam. So, educating those around you, educating your employees, educating your community, because like they might be pretending to be JumpCloud. And if we get wind of that, we need to let our people know that there is this attack happening and it's not legitimate. So educating people on how to recognize it is important, but we also need to know how to report it, because for security, visibility is so important. We need to know what's happening at our boundaries, and phishing is a big part of that. You typically see a lot of CEO spoofing attacks. I've seen that at like every single company I've worked at. So, and unfortunately, these attackers definitely prey on human, behaviors. Like, they will have a sense of urgency. They're going to try to entice you. And things might just be slightly misspelled. There's a lot of ways. So it's important to have like annual, quarterly training or having an ongoing, like, have training on how to report phishing that is like, and like resources, and you continue to run this home. Like, that's what this month is about. Is just like things that we're supposed to be communicating throughout the year. We're just like dosing it. One of my favorite memes is like, you just throw everything in and whatever sticks is the right amount, but it's like we have to still get these messaging out here.
Yeah, people have to hear things a lot of times before it sticks, at least 7 to 10 times before it will start to register for the first time. So it takes a lot of repetition before people will start to really listen and understand.
Yeah. So there's one last behavior that they're highlighting this month, which I can't drive home enough, is update your software. They found, the NCA found that nearly a third of US and UK respondents say that they either sometimes, rarely, or never install secure like updates, which is really upsetting because like I would say 9 times out of 10, those updates that you for Zoom, for your browser, for your computer, those are including security patches. So, they find a vulnerability or some form of bug that can be exploited, we need to fix those. They're having, companies are constantly having pen tests, and they're finding, they have vulnerability scanners, they have all of these things. So when we're pushing out these updates, or, they're updating your system, a lot of times they're trying to patch those holes. And if you don't update and you don't get the most secure version, you're opening yourself up to a lot of risk. And these are known vulnerabilities. Like usually, very rarely, you're going to have a 0 day. They happen. It's not that they don't happen. It's just not your most common vulnerability. And so like a lot of vulnerabilities out there, you can look up the CVEs.
We talk about those. We talk about those all the time. In fact, we kind of make fun of the CVE numbers because they're always like really long and complicated. But in our IT news section, we talk about those a lot because those are really important. So that's a frequent topic here. CVE, common vulnerabilities and exploits. I think. Yeah, it's pretty close. I know it's common vulnerabilities and something starts with an E. But yeah, we do those and talk about the ratings because how bad it is also something to look at. Like I think it goes from 1 to 10 maybe. And so, if it's a 9, then you're going to want to address that a lot faster than if it's only a 1, right? Because that's a low exposure, low exposure, low risk sort of thing versus a 9 or a 10 where you're like, oh, I really need to go look at this like right now because that's bad.
Yeah. And exactly. So,
Thanks, Kelly.
it
was exposure.
Visibility is so important for a security team. So you also want to be monitoring like intelligent feeds for, what vulnerabilities are coming up, what you should be responding to and should be aware of. If there's, I'm surprised they didn't include anything with ransomware or third-party attacks, honestly, because that is also a growing concern. And I think everyone should think about where they're sharing their data. And, it kind of comes under phishing, potentially ransomware, but it's, you want to know how to capture, what are those indicators of compromise, usually like IP addresses, domains, they can be several things. And you want to use your systems like your endpoint protection and other monitoring systems to input those. And so you can start monitoring and capturing that. But then there's like major vulnerabilities like Log4j, which requires all hands on deck, focus. And those, require a lot of investigation and making sure you're finding every place that those may exist and like remediating that. So that is like incident response, full on response, like the little exercises you're doing constantly on, you know, like alerts here and there. This is like when you get those big, the internet is on fire. Those require everyone. Which, if you're a small business, you might want to look into a $0 retainer. So if there is a breach, you have someone on call to help you respond. So breaches can be very expensive. I've had employees in the past where I'm like, you're not locking your computer. Anyone can walk in here and use your computer. And they're like, I don't care. I'm like, your behavior could lead to a breach, which could lead to this company going bankrupt, and which could lead to everyone losing their jobs. So is that, sometimes I don't like being, a alarmist, but sometimes you have to bring, the true risks to the table when communicating with people. Like you said, you have to say it over and over and over again. So like having the statistics, having the real world examples of how, being irresponsible, not having these key security controls in place, not doing risk management, and having risk-informed decisions, and that iterative process that comes with like compliance and other things, which
and be prepared, right? Like, would you rather plan for something and know what you're going to do to respond to it, or would you rather it happen and then you're in panic mode, like, oh no, what do I do? I mean, it's much easier to say, okay, if this happens, who do I need to contact? What do we need to do to mitigate it? Who am I going to call to help with it? And have a plan in place and list out the steps and have it in your standard operating procedures, or like whatever your book is of what you're doing. Some people have like a red book, or whatever their SOP is, but have it ready, know what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, because otherwise you're going to be running around, like they say back home, running around like a chicken with your head cut off, because you're just like, the sky is falling. When if you plan ahead, and this is part of, like if you're trying to get ISO certified, or you're working on your SOC and things like that, or you get audited, you have to know and plan for these things, because you're going to get dinged on those things anyway. So why not go ahead and plan ahead of time, know what you're going to do and who's going to be involved, and train those people and be ready for it, and hope that you never have to use it.
Yeah. And so there's so many different documents, but we would typically refer to that as a business continuity and disaster recovery plan. Business continuity can be anything from like bad PR to like, anything that can happen that might impact business operations. And then disaster recovery is typically more technical, like if our system goes down, how are we going to recover? So those are really important procedures to have in place, but you also want to test them. So you want to do mock disasters. You want to test your recovery methods, understand your RPO and RTO, which is your recovery point objective and recovery time objective, I think, which is like from the attack, like how much time, does it take you to recover, and how much like data loss are you going to experience? So understanding that and then bringing that exercise to inform your risk, and like include that in your risk register, and then create controls. So yeah, a DR VC test is going to be a part of most, like it should be a part of a SOC. It's definitely a part of ISO. And then having incident response as well, which can be anything from a phishing attack to some malware on your computer to really anything. There's so many different cases, those can be prepared for by having run books, which are like typical, like, we identify phishing, we do this, we do this, we do this. There's malware, we do this, we do this, we do this. So anyone can come in, look at this procedure, follow it. And then for more expansive, you have tabletop run throughs as well, which you would want to run through. And, this helps, incident commanders be more versed in what they need to do. So when the emergency does come, they have this training, they have this experience to fall into, they know the steps to take. So we're not running around with like chickens. How much time do we have?
We have until 12:30 or 11:30 your time, so we are good. We can keep going.
Okay, so there was a couple things I also wanted to talk about. One other thing I'm doing for this month, and I partnered up with marketing on that side, was to come out with a blog for building a security program from the ground up. It's really important. Like, SMEs and like small businesses and mid-sized businesses are really my like bread and jam. Like yeah, it's really important to me to secure those folks. Like, all of the startups I've been a part of has definitely been focused on SMEs. So for me is, those are everyday people. They don't have the budgets to have a full-fledged security program. They may only have one or two people, typically, if anybody, focused on security, but it is so important for everyone because, 42% of small businesses reported being hit by cyber attack in the last year. And then also, like, that's very much the same rate as almost enterprises. And that was reported by, I want to always give my sources. It's important. This is from my advisor, Smith. I don't know how they collected it, but it is something that we are going to source in this blog. For me, I always, GRC is not always the most like fancy part of security or the most like cool, but it's really important. And you need to understand it in order to run a successful program. Compliance shouldn't be separate. I very much believe in integrated GRC. I feel like, it's the foundation of the security program. So if you're unfamiliar with it, there's a lot of frameworks out there. So if you don't know how to write controls, and this is your first time coming to it, there's a lot of resources out there. I really like NIST, even though it's more government focused. It shows, like, the NIST framework especially really lays out, the different controls you need to have a holistic security program, definitely corporate security. And then when you're getting into cloud security, you definitely want to research the specific provider. So like with AWS, they have the well-architected framework to guide users on the necessary controls to secure their cloud environment. Relying on those resources can make your life a lot easier and guide your decision making. With that, you have to first, I've mentioned this a lot, to really have you need to have security folks need to have and attain visibility into all the happenings, else we're not going to know what's going on and we don't know where needs our attention. So there are like three main areas you can approach first. You want to know logs so you can do monitoring, so you can actually see if there's any events happening, any incidents. So you want to understand which sources exist, how you can retrieve these logs, the priority, the location, you want to understand the frequency. This will allow you to, make plans to automate your log monitoring for security operations. And this will, down the road, monitoring these sources, like in AWS, there's guard duty, your endpoint protection, whether it's CrowdStrike or another system. More and more, we're getting more monitoring into the systems here, though I would love to see even more. And yeah, it's really important. And then, of course, we need to know where our data lives. This is important for both security and privacy. So you want to know where it's stored, where it's processed, in transit, at rest, the scope of the data, like whether it is covered in SOC 2 or ISO or GDPR, whatever you follow. So you should have diagrams that document all of this, because it's data security. We need to know what data we're protecting and if any of it is being mishandled. And understanding PII is very important for privacy. So understanding your data flows internally is very important. So make sure you document those and you keep them up to date. And then finally, access. JumpCloud is completely built off of identity management and device management and access. It's so important when securing information. You have to limit access. You have to know who's accessing your systems and what access they need. We need to make sure we have separation of duties, that we have least privilege. So no person should have enough access to misuse the system, and people should only have the access needed, the minimum access needed to do their jobs. It can be an unruly system, but it's really a great piece of evidence to have for audits, and that's an access control matrix. So that would straight up document every role in your organization. When you're a smaller business, this is a lot easier. When you get larger, it becomes a little bit more difficult. But understand every role and all of their entitlements for that role across all of the applications. So I've personally built out one. It took me a quarter of like interviewing stakeholders and keeping them like really understanding who has what access. Do they really need this access? And you find a lot of risks through that process. And it's a form of internal audit. So it's very valuable. You want to keep it up to date. It's good for HR and IT to have a relationship, so they understand the new roles, they understand new onboarding and offboarding, but we also want to understand when people change those roles. So that's also where an access control matrix. So
Hey, Nicole, Kelly has a question in the chat about, does anyone have a good resource for Hardening 365 or G Suite tenants to help spare users from some of the most obvious attempts? I don't know if you have anything in that. And if you don't, that's okay.
So I'm more familiar with G Suite. There is definitely a lot of controls within the admin console that they have to harden those tenants, like whether it's in Gmail or it's locking down access in Drive. Again, I can give you my experience, but I'm not a subject matter expert in any one, system. I wouldn't feel so. Again, I would say research that service provider, see what their like recommendations for best practices are, and understand what different controls you have access to, because G Suite has a lot, and I'm sure 365 does as well. So there's definitely controls there to harden your systems. A lot of it's not by default, so you do have to go in. So it's always good to understand what configurations are possible, because misconfiguration is actually one of the most common risks in web applications. So according to the OWASP top 10. So, oh, thank you, Sam. Yeah, so I'm sorry if I can't answer that question fully, but I know that those systems more and more are coming out with controls to help you harden your tenants. And then also getting like JumpCloud helps, you know, especially on the access side and managing access. So it's, yeah. And then also you can, you know, Chrome or keeping your browsers up to date like that, everything becomes so intertwined. And so like, yes, you can have controls on this one system, but you need to have other, like, it goes back to that layered security. So yeah, harden individual tenants, but also make sure you have layers and boundaries before that as well. Any other questions? If not, I'm going to try to wrap things up a little.
Yeah, go right ahead. I don't see any more questions in the chat right now. And then if you, we've got about 13 more minutes. And if you do wrap up, then we'll jump to the IT news.
Okay. So once you have this visibility, you need to start assessing your risk. And this, everything I'm talking about is an iterative process. So you start with risk management. You want to perform a risk assessment. Through all of these processes, you should have been noting your risks because that is a form of assessment and supportive auditing. So collecting and documenting that evidence. So you will be identifying risks through this process. So you want to create a risk register where you can track all of that, like the ID and description of the risk, the likelihood, the impact, the severity, who is the risk owner. Everything should have an owner. And if that work has been approved, you want to understand the mitigating action, which would be your action that you're taking, like a description of that. And there, you know, you want to implement SSO. Or one that I like to is like the risk would be terminated employees still have access to systems. And what we would do is have, you know, we're going to implement offboarding procedures. And then you'll highlight your treatment plan, which is more of just a label. There's a few different kind of treatments you can approach a risk. Some of those are like mitigating, transferring, accepting, avoiding. There's about 7 or so, if you want to get that exact. And all of this can be tailored to your company. So, which I'll get into. But you also can track corrective actions, which are more of the exact actions that were taken. So you want to have offboarding, but, you know, we create a checklist for IT and, you know, or we implemented a technology like JumpCloud to help, and like an integration with like HR system, you know, the more, what are you doing? What did you actually do? And the results of that, and then progress, due date, and completion date. So this is really, you know, informing what you're doing. And then the fun part happens, which is actually implementing those controls. Once you identified the risk and how you're going to mitigate them, that can result in like one control per risk or multiple controls per risk. And again, like I didn't really say this before, but a control really just breaks down to either a policy, process, or technology. So it's like, I have this process. There is this policy in place. This technology is used. So it's really just bite-sized chunks of what you are doing in your program. You get to implement those, which is where the technical aspect of compliance comes in. That can be anything from IT and HR controls to, you know, IR monitoring to infrastructure as code. yeah, I get like when people think compliance is purely a soft skill, there's a lot of implementation that's required, especially in a small business. You're juggling it all. So making sure you implement them, because it's fun to put things on paper, or maybe not, but it's definitely fun to make it happen. And then you want to document this all in policies, because that's what is a way to communicate that to the whole business. So you've defined these individual controls, and now you wrap them up in a policy, so you can have your employees know what they have to comply with, and have them acknowledge it. And it's a way to, it's a very powerful communication tool. And then whenever you're resolving issues, it also becomes kind of it's almost a sword. And so you can kind of just cut off conversations, like, no, it's in policy, this is against policy. There is a power trip you sometimes get in compliance, especially during an audit season, because you're just like, nope, it's for the audit, I need it, it's SOC 2. It's just like, it's required. It's fun sometimes. And then you just repeat it. So like there is a capability model out there as well, which is like you can kind of, based off of different criteria, understand your maturement of your company. So you might start off as a 0 or a 1. It's not the worst thing, as long as you're, striving for improvement to get to like a 3 or a 4. So it should be an iterative process. You might start off and you can't afford a third-party audit, but making sure you're going through these visibility practices and like informing your decisions by risk, that's an iterative process. And it ties into continuous improvement. And that's what I believe in. Like, unfortunately, we have to be correct 100% of the time, and attackers only have to be right once. But there's so much we can do, and it sometimes can be overwhelming, because it's like this mountain range almost of work that needs to be done in security. There's so much. But as someone who climbed a mountain and pulled their leg muscle in the first 200 feet, but was too stubborn to turn back, the way you climb a mountain and you get through it is one step at a time. So my advice is always like, just focus on one step at a time and then repeat it. And you'll start to see a year, 6 months, a year, 2 years down the road, you're going to look back and you're like, oh my God, we have made so much progress.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like JumpCloud, one of our values is 1% better every day. So that really resonates with me. So
yeah, we've even done some, somebody did like a little, like looking at what happens if you do 1% better every day over the course of a year, and how much progress you will have made versus nothing. And even just that one little increment, it was amazing how much that added up.
yeah.
It was really interesting.
I mean, there's going to be a blog post that's going to come out later this month that kind of goes into more details about what I discussed around building a program, but that's pretty much the high levels of it.
I think what would be great though, Nicole, is even just a series of short community posts, maybe just talking about some of these resources and some of the frameworks, and pointing to where people might find more information, or just talking about little bits and pieces of how to start a program, and how to do more, and these things you talked about doing a self audit, how to make these small incremental improvements, how to document procedures, and how to do something before a breach happens. Like how do you figure out what you're going to do if something does happen. I don't know what you've written in the blog yet, but maybe just some smaller bite-sized things that can be posted in the community as some how-tos in the security forum if you have time.
Is
and if
that
you
in the lounge, or
no, I'll send you a link to the security forum piece so you could put them in there, and then you could put links to it in the lounge as well. Because I think these would be good on the community for people to have some resources of like these frameworks you're talking
Yeah.
about where they can find them, links to CISA and other resources, and just all of those things, and even just some more about how do you get started and stuff like this if you want to do more. There's lots of things. They could be conversation starters, or they could be how to's, things like that.
I think I could definitely commit to at least one post a week and start having those conversations and expanding on that. And I would really be happy to engage with the community more. Community development, community awareness is really important to me. I'm also I'm a volunteer wrangler for a conference in Houston, HouSecCon, which is coming up. And so there's a lot of, I'm always thrilled to be a part of the community. So I would be really open to that.
Yeah, we've got a whole security forum, dedicated to topics like that. And I think that would be perfect. And this is the perfect month to start it, but there are so many topics that we could go well past October.
Yes.
So we've only got a
We are
couple.
a security company. So.
Yes, at heart, we really are. So we can definitely talk about that all day long and then some. We've only got a couple of minutes left, so I'm not really going to jump into the IT news, but there was one quick thing that is not directly IT related that I thought was a really interesting headline that I'm going to jump into really quickly, and because I thought we're all mostly geeks here and people might find it interesting. The Internet Archive is wanting to build a collection of amateur radio material, and that includes creating a library of not only amateur audio broadcasts, but early digital publications. So any old digital photos, websites, videos, podcasts, and things like early days of computing from the 70s up through the 90s, like old videos from YouTube or digital newsletters that are no longer available. So things that might have gone by the wayside because an early host went by the wayside, but you might have some old digital files. If you have anything like that, they are looking to build up their list of things. And I love the Internet Archive because you can go back and find some really cool stuff that no longer exists, and that's the only place that you can find it. So I'll post a link to that in the show notes, which will be on the community, and it's just kind of something fun. So if you have some old stuff that you've done in the past that you think would be cool to be preserved in some way, go check out that project and see if you want to contribute, or if you know someone who has done like some old ham radio stuff or other things that you think should be preserved, go get in contact with them. Let's see real quick if there's any comments. So Kelly says that her users and clients who are trying to go from zero to security could really use these frameworks. I think that's a good point, Kelly, and that's kind of why I'm asking Nicole if they can do this, because I think it's really important. And Kelly works at an MSP, and sometimes they're the first real IT in an organization, and so security is really intimidating to those people. So yes, we want to build up things like this, these resources for people, so that they can refer to stuff like this and know, where do I start? So I think that's a really good call out, Kelly, and we want to work on more things like this. So thank you for making that comment.
Yeah.
And go
One
ahead.
last thing I would like to say is, especially when you're like working with people who aren't traditional security people, it is very intimidating to to approach everything in security with them. So just start with the role, help them understand how they can bring security to their role. So IT, there's a whole world of IT security, but like sales and marketing, think about what data you're collecting and where is that data, and do we really need that data? Or software development, here are like common vulnerabilities. How do you solve those vulnerabilities? Do we have scanning to catch those vulnerabilities? And then there's general controls that requires every person in order to be successful, making sure you do access control correctly and requesting access. Make sure you do your training. And it's a whole company effort. So starting with just how you can own security definitely helps build a security culture and starts hardening your people and starts, hardening your boundaries. So yeah, that's very much overwhelming for people. I understand that. So if you just start where they're coming from, it's a good place to start leading them into security.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, we are a little bit over and out of time. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Nicole, thank you for being our guest. And Alexa, thanks for being back. And it's good to be back. And thanks to the crowd for being very active today. And if you have any suggestions or questions about the security stuff, I believe we have a channel in the lounge, but feel free to suggest types of content like this that you want us to put in the community, and we have writers that we can actually ask to start something like that so we can get better resources in the community for you, because that's what we are working on and what we want to do. So we will get on that. And once again, happy Friday. Thank you all for joining us. And next week, by the way, we are going to be talking about remote assist. We know we have a lot of you that are excited about this. It is in early access right now. It's getting ready to go GA fairly soon. But I think next week you're going to get just a slightly early sneak peek of it. So be ready, and we will see you all then. Take care, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Have a good weekend. Oh, jinx.
Bye all.
Bye, everyone.